everyone, welcome to Tea Time with Alice. I'm Alice, and this is a series where I dress up, drink tea, and talk about whatever I feel like. Today I am dressed in Renaissance garb, and I am drinking Arbor Tea's Organic Spearmint Tea. Spearmint tea is one of my favorites. I love how relaxing and also uplifting it is. I love mint, and spearmint is just a very bright, vibrant version of mint. So it's great for springtime, but really you can drink it any time of the year. It's just perfect. And I love mint teas with a teaspoon of honey. But this one is just straight. It's very aromatic and very tasty. Oh goodness, it's just so good. So today I'm going to be listing 10 different types of dreams that I've had, and these might be the most common types of dreams that I've had, but they're not in any particular order. I'm just going to be listing them out, so there's not like a top, or a tier listing of the different dreams. I'm just gonna mention them and give a little blurb about them because I felt like talking about dreams today. So the first one I'll mention is the apocalyptic dream. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It's when you're experiencing an apocalypse in your dream. And I've had different types of apocalypses being experienced. Probably the one I've had the most, and which is the most terrifying to me, is the nuclear war apocalypse. When it's usually that I'm in some kind of building or in an area with a bunch of people, and we all know that a bomb's about to be dropped on our heads. And it's terrifying. And what's even more terrifying is that this happens, not necessarily with nuclear weapons, but with non-nuclear bombs. It is actually happening to real people. And I think that that is horrific, and the fact that it's coming into my dream, when I have the dreams, it feels a little more real than some of the other crazy nightmares I have that are really disturbing, but they're less realistic, so they're not as terrifying as the apocalypse, which is something that could happen and in many ways does happen. So that's scary. I wanted to get that one over with. The next one I'll mention is the running and or chasing dream, and I feel like a lot of people have had this type of dream. It's when you're being chased, or in some cases for me, I'm trying to get somewhere, but quickly. Not necessarily that I'm being chased, but I have some sort of goal, or I'm trying to get away from something that might not necessarily be chasing me, but I want to get as far away as I possibly can, as quickly as possible. And so I'm just running and running and running, and it feels like you're running all night long. And somehow in the dream you can keep going longer than you probably, or at least I probably could in real life, and just go on and on and on. And then when I wake up, I'm exhausted because I've been running all night long, even though I've just been lying in my bed. My brain thinks I've been running, and somehow that makes me very tired. So that's another not as fun dream to have, although there is something a little bit cathartic in it as well. The next one I think a lot of people have experienced, and it's the flying, or in my case a lot of the times hovering dream. And this is when you fly in your dreams, and when you're when your self is flying, not like you're in a plane or some kind of contraption that's carrying you, but when your body is levitating. And in my case, it's usually I just kind of jump, and then I don't fall back down. I just kind of keep going and floating, and I can kind of hover, and there's some sort of will within me that keeps me lifted up off the ground. And I don't usually go very high. I usually just kind of hover out over the ground and I carry myself somewhere forward. Every now and then I'll do a little bit of like a woo in some kind of, maybe a tree height, about the highest I'd go, or maybe roof height. I've definitely been like jumped from roof to roof, kind of like a moon jump like this, where I hover a little bit, and that's fun. The next type of dream is not necessarily based on something that happens in the dream or the plot of the dream, but it's a feature of the dream that I feel like is very significant. And so I call it the building dream. And it's not building as a verb, like you're building something, but it's building as a noun, like you're in a building. And I've had lots of dreams where I'm in some sort of fantastic, magnificent building. There was one I remember I was in a church, but it was also a greenhouse. So the roof was made of glass and there were just plants all throughout the pews, like you were in a side of a jungle, but there were pews, and it was gorgeous. And another one was I was in some sort of music venue and the floors were made of shiny wood and it was huge, and the roof wasn't super high, but it amplified this, like the sound was amplified and echoed off the roof, and it sounded super, super good. And it was just this like wide room and things like that. So I've had a lot of dreams where I'm in some kind of building, or even in some sort of building that is a maze, like it's a convoluted architectural system and I have to navigate through it, and it's weird. So whatever plot the dream has is happening in this magnificent place that I wish existed in real life, because it's beautiful. Oftentimes they're beautiful, or at least impressive. The next dream is the portal dream. And I might have mentioned earlier that dreams made me feel, when I was a little kid, I don't think I mentioned this. When I was a little kid, I was kind of obsessed with dreams. And a lot of times because I had really vivid and frequent dreams, and some of them were really weird and confusing, and I often remembered them. So I had this idea when I was little that dreams were taking place in another world, and you were living in that other world. And I don't know if I fully believe that still, but I think it's a cool concept that, you're able to experience things in your mind while you're dreaming that you wouldn't, or at least couldn't or wouldn't experience in the real world. So a lot of times I've had dreams where I've literally felt like it's been so real and so vivid that I feel like I'm in another world, and somehow the plot of the dream also like validates that, like that's what it's about, is that somehow I've transported into another world. And so I'm calling that a portal dream, because even though it doesn't happen in like the actual transportation doesn't happen in the dream, it's like the fact that the dream happened means that I've entered into another world, and while I'm dreaming, I'm discovering that, and it feels true while it's happening. And that kind of leads into the next one, which I've had less often. I've had it a few times. It's not as common as some of the others, and that's the virtual reality dream. And that's when you're it's kind of a dream within a dream, or like virtual reality within a dream. So I've had dreams where I'm literally in some kind of virtual reality and I'm doing things and I'm acting things out, but as I'm there, I know that it's virtual reality and that there's something outside of it that is reality, except that reality is still in the dream, like it's in the dream world. So I feel like when this happens, I feel a little more free to do things in the virtual reality that I wouldn't necessarily want to do in the reality of the dream world, or obviously in the waking world either. And that leads me to the next type of dream, which is lucid dreaming. And a lot of people know what lucid dreaming is. It's when you're aware that you're dreaming. And oftentimes when you're aware that you're dreaming, you can start to realize that, like, oh, if this is just a dream, then I can, this isn't real life. I can do whatever I want in it. And they start to take actions of their own will and that are not determined by the dream story or the dream plot. And I've had these dreams several times, and usually what happens is that once I start to realize that I'm gaining control, like I can control my own actions, but when I start to try to control the actions of the people around me, it slips and I end up waking up. So people have there's all sorts of tips and tricks on how to lucid dream and how to get better at it so that you can basically create your own, almost like using a dream as virtual reality. Now, the flip side of lucid dreams is when you're awake, when you're asleep, but you think you're awake and you don't have any control. And that's what a false awakening is. And false awakenings usually come with sleep paralysis. And I've had a lot of these and they're terrifying. And so basically it's when you're lying in bed and you're asleep and then you wake up and you maybe get out of bed and you start to do things and you're doing things around the house, like your morning routine or whatever, and then something happens that's weird and you, oftentimes for me, some sort of really scary thing happens and I realize only after I've actually woken up that whole thing was still part of the dream. So that's what the false awakening is that you think you've awoken, but you haven't really. And what happens for me a lot is that I wake up thinking someone's in my house and I start to freak out, but I cannot move. I physically cannot move because I'm actually still mostly asleep. And that's the sleep paralysis. And sometimes I have to really force myself awake, or it just takes some time. But there's a lot of people can hallucinate in that state because they're kind of in between sleeping and waking. And so you hallucinate, you can see the room around you, except it's not really, there's something in it that's not really there. So that was another scary one. So the next two are less scary, and I'll go through them very quickly. The next one is what I call the sorting dream. Now, I'm a very organized person, and I really like things to be just so. And so I've had many dreams where for hours and hours in the dream, I am sorting things. I am putting things in their places. I'm either folding clothes and putting them into piles, or I'm arranging books and putting them into categories, or maybe office supplies. Whatever the case may be, I spend a lot of time in my mind while I'm asleep sorting things to put them where they go, and that helps me feel relaxed. It helps me feel relaxed in the real world and apparently also when I'm asleep. And then the next one is the movie dream. And that's when you're not really in the dream, you're just kind of watching something happen. And for me, I've had many dreams where I'm not a character in it, but I'm seeing the main character sort of play out this story that has a, beginning, middle, and end and it has a complete plot. And oftentimes it's like actually a really cohesive plot that I could wake up and just write a story about. And I have actually done that before. And maybe it's weird, but maybe it's not, you know, a great story, but it is still a complete story. And these people are going about that story in the dream and you're watching it happen. And it usually is about movie length. At least the story of the dream is about movie length. I don't know how long you're actually experiencing it while you're asleep because movie time or dream time is warped. But anyway, that's all I got. A list of different types of dreams that I've had a lot and what they are. If you've had any of these, or if you have other dreams I have not mentioned, if you have any thoughts about dreams, it would be interesting to talk about that because I think dreams are awesome and I like talking about them. So that's all.